Welcome back, everyone, to Stay in Your Lane, brought to you by Triple T Transport. I'm your host, John Mahle. Today, got Dan North with us again. Dan is senior economist, Allianz Trade North America. We love having you on, Dan. Big fan myself, and many of our fans are. Uh, we talked, what was it, late May, early June, about where we were from an economic
Hmm.
perspective. And
Yeah.
I'd love to hear as things have kind of unfolded throughout the summer. We're going into that third quarter now. What you're seeing in the economy today.
Right. Well, in some respect, it's pretty similar. The story is on the big level is that we're starting to see or have been seeing a slowing economy and cooling inflation. And that's not a surprise. That's what the Federal Reserve has been trying to do over the past couple of years by raising interest rates. And by the way, just a interesting technicality, everybody talks about the Fed raising rates or cutting rates. And I say it too because it's very convenient, but really the Federal Reserve has control of only one interest rate. It's called the Fed funds rate. It's the overnight rate that banks lend money to each other. Just kind of interesting technicality. They're raising rates by raising one rate, which has influence of others. And I'll show you how that works. So we're in that situation. If we look at evidence of a slowing economy, we see slowing in retail sales. We see a slowing in disposable personal income, which is the income after taxes and inflation. It's what you have to spend, really. We see a drawdown of excess savings, which people have been using to spend. And we also looking into the manufacturing sector. We look at durable goods orders, for instance. Durable goods are things that are supposed to last 3 years or more, like big appliances, all the way up to cars and planes. That's now growing at, almost flat. It's not growing at all. Industrial production, a similar measure. So you have all this evidence of the consumer slowing down, income slowing down, manufacturing. The big one is employment. Um, there is the single biggest economic release in the world is the government's employment report. It comes out on the first Friday of every month at 8:30 in the morning. And if you watch CNBC or something like that, yeah, they actually have a little countdown in the lower corner to, the actual second when the news is going to be released. It's that impactful. And last month was quite a bit slower than expected, and the unemployment rate is starting to go up more rapidly. There are many, many numbers in this report, but the two big ones are the number of jobs created, which wasn't as much as we thought, and the unemployment rate. So, in addition, the employment report is important because it's the freshest data we have, but it also measures, I think, what is the most important economic variable it is. I mean, after all, do you care if GDP grew at 2.2% or 2.4% last month? No. You care if you have a job, you care if other people have jobs. So employment is really important. And that's where we're seeing some slowdown now.
Now, in previous episodes, you brought up some really good points because you said the last thing anybody wants to do is lay people off or downsize because of the people. And you said it happens from month to month. In a 1 month period of time, it'll go from going positive to going negative.
Right. So there are a couple of different ways to measure things here. Um, it is true, nobody wants to lay anybody off. So sometimes in that employment report, you'll see the number of jobs created, also known as non-farm payrolls. The big number coming out of that report will actually go negative. That is, the number of jobs shrank last month. We don't expect to see that happen this coming month. We might expect it to see it continue to slow down.
Okay.
Now, that said, a couple years ago, the technology sector had gone on this tremendous hiring binge. And so when the economy slowed down, they suddenly realized we got too many people, and they started laying off people, in droves. So that's where you saw the big layoffs. And now, there are a couple of other measures in the employment market, one of which is what they call job quits. After the COVID epidemic, people thought, I can get a job anywhere now. No problem. Everybody was unemployed for a while. I can get a new job, so I'll just quit this one. And that one went to record highs. Well, that's come back down to normal levels.
Okay.
So these different measures of the employment market show slowing. You did see that one example a couple of years ago of the tech sector letting people go at a rapid rate,
Mm-hmm.
but you haven't quite seen that yet. It is the whole employment situation is slowing and getting back more towards pre-COVID activity.
So our last discussion into May, 1st of June was, it didn't look positive for rate cuts until the end of December, the very end of December. Now we're starting to hear rumblings of rate cuts coming sooner. Is that because of the information that you're sharing with us? The impact of that, the reaction then is to look at trying to lower rates?
That's exactly right. And all throughout the year, this guess among all economists as to when the Fed was going to start cutting rates has gone back and forth and back and forth. But now virtually everybody is certain that in two weeks, middle of September, the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates. Now, they're at the point of doing that because they have to balance two different things. They have to balance inflation and employment. So they, over the past few years, been raising interest rates to fight off inflation. They've been successful at that, but the cost is that unemployment has started to go up. You get one or the other, and they have to try to balance that. Well, now they're at the point where they see inflation has started to drop off much more towards where they want to be. So that's towards one of their goals. The other goal being employment. Let's just call that economic activity again, because employment is the best, I think, and most important measure of economic activity. We're starting to see that slow. So the Fed is sitting here and saying, okay, we've been successful at inflation. Let's make sure we don't strangle the economy. So now it's time to start cutting rates because we can do that safely now. And they've been very clear, or I should say, yeah, very clear that that's going to be the case. And the way they do this is they give speeches and give hints here and there of what they think the economy is doing, and then they might, like, a cut in the Fed funds rate may be appropriate sometime, depending on how the economy develops and if it develops the way we think it will. So the Fed's got their two reasons now. They've
So
got inflation more under control, and they've got a cooling economy, which they want to prevent from cooling more.
So we're basically moving the clock up on the drop, and or lower Fed's lowering the rates about 3.5 months from
Yeah,
what we saw in June, May to June.
that's right. And that's basically because one of the things I mentioned at the top, we've got an economy that's cooling a little bit faster than we like. And we're seeing that inflation coming under control more rapidly than had been expected. Now, it's an interesting thing. I just mentioned this about inflation. Okay, depending on which measure you want to use, inflation is running at 2.5% roughly year over year. That's a lot better than the 9% we had back in 2022.
Now, is that core inflation that we're talking about?
No, that's for instance what we call the headline CPI. But core inflation, you're right, is more what the Fed looks at. But the
Okay.
point is, even back in 2022, core inflation was at a 40-year high. The point is, there was a 40-year high, however you measure it, a couple of years ago, and now it's down more towards the 2% target. Well, so you've got this line that goes down from 9% down to 2%. Just because that line is going down doesn't mean prices are going down. They're still rising at over 2% per year.
Okay.
They're still rising, and they're rising on top of a couple of years of hot inflation. So that's why you still feel sticker shock when you go to the grocery store or anywhere else. You still think, gosh, this seems a lot more expensive. And it is, because inflation is still here with us on top of a couple of years of really hot inflation. And wage earners still are underwater.
Continue watching on the next episode of the Stay in Your Lane podcast.